My name is Jacob. I learned that the person you trust most in the world can betray you so thoroughly that the only rational response is to disappear entirely. I'd been married to Stephanie for 6 years when I discovered her affair. 6 years that I believed were built on mutual trust and genuine partnership. We'd met when she was 23 and I was 26. After weeks of meeting, we discovered we had chemistry and began dating. The relationship progressed naturally. We moved in together after a year, got engaged after 2 years of dating, and married in a small ceremony surrounded by family and close friends. We were both practical people focused on building financial stability rather than impressing anyone with a lavish wedding. Our marriage started strong. We did things together, talked about buying a house eventually, maybe having kids once we were more established. I worked for a small healthcare company, while my wife, Stephanie, worked for a marketing firm. Together, we pulled in enough to keep us in the middle class with the potential to move up. We'd been saving aggressively for a down payment on a house. Had a joint savings account specifically designated for that purpose. I managed our finances because I was better with budgeting and tracking expenses. Stephanie trusted me completely to handle that side of our lives while she focused on her career and social activities. The account had grown to a somewhat significant amount over the years we had been married. Not enough for a full down payment in Seattle's inflated real estate market, but a solid foundation. We were both contributing regularly, building toward homeownership. Our relationship had no obvious problems. No big fights. No red flags either notisa. Stephanie was affectionate, engaged, and present. Would ask about my day, make weekend plans, and talk about our future. Everything seemed normal. She'd mentioned some of her coworkers a few times over the past year or so. People she worked with closely on several projects. She described them as talented, funny guys who made the stressful workdays more bearable. I'd never thought much of it. People have work friends. It's normal to be close with colleagues you spend 40 hours a week with. I'd never suspected anything. Never felt jealous or worried since most of these coworkers were male. Stephanie had always been loyal and transparent throughout our relationship. She'd give me her phone without hesitation if I needed to look something up. Would talk openly about her friendships with male and female colleagues. Never gave me reason to doubt her. I trusted her completely. Believed she'd never want anyone else. That we were building something lasting together. But one Tuesday evening changed everything. I took permission to work from home that day because I had a persistent headache. While resting in the living room, I remembered to check something on Google, but both my phone and laptop were in the bedroom. The closest device I could see was Stephanie's iPad on the coffee table across from me. She uses this device to consume media, and I remember it doesn't have any passwords. I reached for it and tapped the screen to wake it. It woke immediately to whatever she'd been looking at last night. A movie on Netflix was open. I was about to close it and navigate to a browser when a message preview caught my eye, from a name she mentioned in the past as her coworker. The preview text was truncated, but what I could see made my stomach drop. The message said something about how the dress she wore to work that morning held the right places, adding that he can't wait to undress her that night. I stared at those words, wondering what the hell was going on. For context, her iCloud is linked to this iPad, so all the iMessages she receives on her iPhone sync with it. Therefore, I can get her iMessages in real time. I clicked on the message thread, opened it fully, started scrolling. What I found destroyed me. Months of messages. Daily conversations that went far beyond professional or even friendly. Deep emotional intimacy. Sexual content. Photos Stephanie had sent. Bathroom selfies of herself. Messages where she called him baby. When he called her his, they made plans to meet at hotels during lunch breaks. They discussed how careful they needed to be to avoid getting caught. I scrolled back through months of this to find the beginning, but she has been clearing her chats. I read Stephanie's messages about her feelings. How Brandon made her feel alive in ways she hadn't felt in years. Being with him was exciting, dangerous, and fulfilling in ways her marriage wasn't. I read Brandon's messages, describing what they'd done together and what he wanted to do to her. I was lost in thought as I went through these messages for hours. There was no misunderstanding, no alternative explanation. My wife had been having an affair for months, living a complete double life, coming home to me every evening and acting like everything was normal while maintaining this entire separate relationship. The shock was physical. I couldn't breathe properly. I closed the iPad, set it back as I'd found it, stood up and walked around the house, trying to process what I'd just learned. Stephanie would be home later that evening. She would walk in with that same loving smile, ask about my health, and tell me about hers. Would act like she always acted, like a devoted wife who loved her husband. And I'd realize it was all performance, that she was capable of lying effortlessly, of maintaining this facade without any visible cracks. That realization was almost worse than the affair itself. The betrayal wasn't just that she'd been with someone else. It was that she'd been so convincing in her deception, had made me believe everything was fine while conducting this entire secret relationship. I decided immediately not to confront her. Not until I understood my options and had a plan. When Stephanie came home that evening, I acted as if nothing had happened. I asked about her day, told her about mine, made dinner together, watched TV on the couch, went to bed. All our usual routines. She had no idea anything had changed and was as affectionate as always. She kissed me goodnight as we slept. I lay awake most of that night, wondering what was real. Every time she'd said she loved me. Every weekend we'd spent together. Every conversation about our future. All of them are contaminated now, poisoned by the knowledge of what she'd been doing simultaneously. Over the following days, I started observing her differently, watching for signs I'd missed. And I found them everywhere once I knew what to look for. All of these signs seemed innocent when I trusted her. All obvious indicators of an affair now that I knew. But she still acted lovingly, continuing the performance without any apparent guilt or hesitation. That's what made it unbearable. Not just that she'd betrayed me, but that she was so comfortable doing it. I spent the next few weeks pretending everything was normal while feeling like I was dying inside. I would go to work, come home, and maintain our routines, all while knowing everything was a lie. The trust was shattered entirely in my own judgment. I'd believed our marriage was solid. I had trusted her completely, and I'd been wrong about everything. I gradually started pulling away physically and emotionally. Stopped initiating sex. Would claim to be tired or stressed when she initiated. Kept conversations surface level. She noticed but didn't press too hard. Probably assumed I was dealing with work stress. While maintaining this facade, I started researching my options. Looked into divorce law in Washington state. Learned about community property division. Understood that if we divorced, our joint assets would likely be split 50-50 regardless of fault. Those thousands of dollars we'd saved together would be divided. Half of everything I'd worked to save would go to the woman who'd betrayed me. That felt intolerable. I'd contributed more to those savings than she had been responsible for our finances, while she was using our marriage as a cover for her affair. The idea of her walking away with half after what she'd done felt like adding insult to injury. So I started considering alternatives. Not legal ones necessarily, but practical ones. I began researching financial strategies. How to move money without triggering alerts. What assets could be liquidated quietly? How much could be withdrawn from accounts before banks required additional verification? Started learning about cryptocurrency, about how digital assets could be stored and transferred without traditional banking oversight, about exchanges that had minimal verification requirements. Learned about precious metals, how gold and silver could be purchased in small amounts from dealers who didn't report transactions under certain thresholds. I was methodical. Spent hours every evening after Stephanie fell asleep, researching and planning, building a strategy for extracting myself from the marriage while protecting what I'd worked for. Over the next 3 months, I carefully executed that strategy. I'd transfer small amounts from our joint savings to a separate account I'd opened at a different bank. Stephanie never closely monitored the account because she trusted me to manage it. I'd use those transfers to buy cryptocurrency through various exchanges. Small purchases are spread across different platforms. Would immediately transfer the crypto to private wallets not connected to my identity. Started buying gold and silver coins from local dealers. Small denominations paid for in cash. Would store them in a safety deposit box I'd rented at a bank across town. Sold some personal belongings, camera equipment I rarely used, some collectible items, and old electronics. Claimed to Stephanie that I was decluttering. Used the cash for more precious metals purchases. Gradually, I was converting our joint savings into assets that I controlled alone. Assets that wouldn't show up in any divorce proceedings because they'd been liquidated from the account before any legal action began. The joint account balance decreased slowly, but the decrease happened over months, and Stephanie never questioned it. Trusted that I was making wise decisions about her money. That trust made the betrayal easier to justify in my mind. She trusted me financially while betraying me emotionally and physically. Seemed fair that I'd use that trust to protect myself. By about 3 months after I'd discovered the affair, I'd successfully moved a considerable amount of money out of the joint account. It now exists as cryptocurrency in private wallets and as physical precious metals in a safe deposit box. Untraceable. Unreportable, completely outside the marital assets that would be divided in a divorce. During this entire period, Stephanie had noticed the change in my behavior. Would try to initiate conversations about what was wrong, whether I was upset about something. Idée de flacht. Claim work stress or general exhaustion. One evening, we were sitting on the couch, and Stephanie turned to me. Her expression was troubled, vulnerable. She started to say something about how distant I'd been, how we hadn't been intimate in weeks. Asked what was wrong with us. I looked at her calmly. Felt nothing except cold detachment. I told her I was preparing for my freedom. Then watched confusion and fear flash across her face. She didn't understand what I meant. When she started to ask what I was talking about, I stood up, kissed her forehead, and then walked to our bedroom without explaining further. She didn't follow. Probably too shocked or confused to know how to respond. Over the next 2 days, I finalized my preparations. Booked a one-way flight to Bangkok, Thailand. Leaving in 4 days. I chose Thailand because I'd researched extensively, low cost of living, easy visa policies for Americans, established expat communities, and good internet infrastructure for remote work. I'd already secured a remote freelance contract doing systems analysis for a consulting firm. Work I could do from anywhere with a reliable internet connection. I gathered all my important documents, passport, birth certificate, and financial records. Packed 2 large suitcases with clothes and essentials. Included the safety deposit box, key for later access to the precious metals. I left most of my possessions. Didn't care about furniture or household items. Just needed what I could carry and what had actual value. The morning I left, I told Stephanie I had a business trip. Said I'd be gone for a few days. She seemed relieved, probably thought the distance would help, that I'd come back in a better mood. I left for the airport around 6 in the morning. Stephanie was still in bed. Didn't wake her to say goodbye. Just walked out with my bags and got in the Uber I'd scheduled. The flight was long. Seattle to Bangkok with a layover in Tokyo. Total travel time is around 20 hours. Used that time to draft a message I'd send once I landed. Wanted to time it perfectly. Arrive in Thailand, get through immigration, reach my hotel, then send it. The message was simple. Explained that I knew about the affair with her coworker. That I'd known for months. That I'd watched her lie to my face every single day while maintaining her secret relationship. That the trust was destroyed and the marriage was over. Told her I was starting over somewhere she couldn't follow, that she was now free to be with her new guy openly, without the inconvenience of a husband. I landed in Bangkok around midnight local time. Exhausted from travel, but wired with adrenaline. Got through immigration without issues. Retrieved my luggage. Found the hotel I'd booked near Sukhumvit Road in central Bangkok. Checked in around 2 in the morning. Sat on the hotel bed with my phone. It was about 11 in the morning back in Seattle. Stephanie would be at work. I sent the message. Then turned off my phone. Waited about 6 hours before turning it back on. Had dozens of messages from Stephanie. I read through them. Watched the progression from confusion to panic to desperation to anger to pleading. The first messages asked what I meant and whether this was some joke. Then panic about where I was, whether I was safe. Then desperate apologies, claiming the affair meant nothing, begging me to come home. Then anger, accusing me of overreacting, of being cruel. Then back to pleading, saying she loved me, that we could work through this. I read all of them without responding. Felt nothing except detachment. She'd also apparently checked our joint bank account. Saw the depleted balance. Sent messages asking where the money had gone, what I'd done with our savings. I didn't answer any of it. Just read the messages, then turned the phone off again. Spent the first week in Bangkok adjusting to the time difference and finding a long-term living situation. Looked at apartments online, contacted landlords, and viewed several options. I finally found a one-bedroom apartment in a nice neighborhood, a modern building, for about $500 per month. Cheap by Seattle standards, manageable on my freelance income. I signed a 1-year lease. Paid 6 months in advance in cryptocurrency, converted to Thai baht. Moved in with my 2 suitcases and some additional items I bought locally. Then started working remotely. After the first month, I began building routines. Found a gym nearby. Discovered local restaurants. Started learning basic Thai. Joined an expat social group. Began creating a life in this new place. The freedom was disorienting at first. No obligations to anyone. No shared life to maintain. No wife coming home every evening. Just myself and my choices. But it was also liberating. Could do what I wanted without considering anyone else. Could build exactly the life I wanted without compromise. After about 2 months in Bangkok, I contacted a divorce attorney in Seattle. Someone my former financial advisor had recommended. Explained my situation, then she asked about assets, about evidence of the affair, and about my goals for the divorce. I was honest about everything except the money I'd moved. Told her about the remaining joint account balance, about our individually owned vehicles, and about the apartment we rented. Didn't mention the money I'd converted to cryptocurrency and precious metals. The attorney said she could file divorce papers on my behalf. Washington allowed for dissolution of marriage on grounds of irretrievable breakdown without requiring fault. The process would take several months, but could be handled while I remain outside the country. I authorized her to proceed. I wanted the marriage to be officially ended. The divorce papers were served to Stephanie about 3 months after I'd left. The attorney sent me confirmation that she'd been served at our apartment. Stephanie apparently tried calling my attorney repeatedly. Wanted to negotiate, to talk to me, to understand why I was doing this. The attorney maintained professional boundaries. Explained the process, the timelines, and the required documentation. Didn't facilitate any direct communication between us. Stephanie sent me more messages after being served. These were different in tone, angrier, calling me evil for taking the money, accusing me of destroying her life, saying I was cruel and vindictive. I read them without responding, felt nothing except distant satisfaction that she was experiencing consequences. The divorce process took about 6 months. During that time, I built my life in Bangkok. The freelance work was going well. I'd picked up additional clients. Was making comfortable money, especially with Thailand's low cost of living. I made friends in the expat community. Started dating casually, nothing serious, just enjoying the connection without the weight of commitment. I traveled around Southeast Asia on weekends. Visited Cambodia, Vietnam, and Laos. Explored temples, beaches, and cities. I experienced things I'd never imagined doing while married in Seattle. The divorce was finalized later, and as promised, the attorney handled everything remotely. Asset division was straightforward because there weren't many assets to divide, and I told the attorney that Stephanie could have them. No spousal support since we'd both been working and the marriage was relatively short. It was a clean break, and I was officially single again, free from the marriage that had been dead for months before it was legally ended. Stephanie tried reaching out a few more times after the divorce was finalized. Messages saying she'd learned from everything, that she understood why I'd left, that she hoped I was happy. I never responded. There was nothing to say. She'd made her choices. I'd made mine. We were done. Over a year passed as I got to Bangkok. My life here feels authentic in a way my life in Seattle never did. I wake up every morning grateful for the freedom to build precisely the life I want. Work from home or from cafes. Explore the city. Spend time with friends who know me as I am now, not as the person I was in my marriage. The cryptocurrency and precious metals I'd moved provided a financial cushion that's let me take risks and build this new life without desperation. Still have most of it saved, appreciating in value, providing security. Looking back, I understand what I did and why. Some people might call what I did theft. To them, I had no right to move marital assets without Stephanie's knowledge or consent. But I see it differently. I protected what I'd worked for from someone who'd betrayed me completely. Used her trust in me, financially, the same way she'd used my trust in her emotionally. Was it ethical? Probably not by conventional standards. Was it legal? Questionable. I'd moved the money before any divorce filing, which technically made it legal, but the intent was clearly to avoid asset division. But was it justified? In my mind, absolutely. Stephanie had been conducting a months-long affair, had lied to me every single day, and had used our marriage as cover while building a relationship with someone else. Showing no guilt, no hesitation, no consideration for me or our vows. She'd gambled that I'd never find out. That she could have both her stable marriage and her exciting affair indefinitely. She lost that gamble, and the consequences were severe. I learned several things through this experience. I learned that the person you trust most can be the one deceiving you most completely. That performance and reality can diverge so fully that you believe you know someone when you don't know them at all. I learned that betrayal doesn't always announce itself with obvious signs. Sometimes it hides behind normal behavior and loving gestures. Sometimes the betrayer is skilled enough that you have no idea anything is wrong. I learned that confrontation isn't always the answer. Sometimes the betrayal is so complete that there's nothing to discuss. Sometimes the only rational response is strategic withdrawal. I learned that protecting yourself financially during relationship dissolution isn't wrong when the other person has already destroyed the foundation of trust. That self-preservation is legitimate even if it means the other person suffers consequences. Most importantly, I learned that starting over is possible at any age, in any circumstances. That you can leave everything behind and build a completely new life if you're willing to do the work. Stephanie threw away our marriage for an affair with a coworker. Made a calculated choice to risk everything we'd built for excitement and validation. I made a calculated choice to leave completely rather than try to salvage something that had been destroyed. Both options had consequences. Hers led to the loss of her marriage and her financial security. Mine led to losing my old life, but gaining a new one built on my own terms. I don't regret what I did. I don't feel guilty about the money I moved or the way I left. Stephanie had been teaching me for months that deception was acceptable in our marriage. I learned the lesson she was teaching, applied it more effectively than she had, used the trust she'd given me in one area to protect myself from the betrayal she'd committed in another. Some might call that revenge. I call it justice. Or natural consequences meet calculated behavior. She wanted to have everything, a stable marriage and an exciting affair. Wanted the security I provided while experiencing the thrill of someone new. Instead, she has neither. And I have freedom. That's the lesson I taught her. The one she'll remember for the rest of her life. That betrayal has consequences. That trust once broken can't be restored. And the person you underestimate might be more strategic than you realized. She gambled everything on her ability to deceive me indefinitely. Lost everything when I discovered the truth and responded with calculated precision rather than an emotional reaction. I taught her that actions have consequences, that you can't betray someone completely and expect them to absorb it passively. And I taught myself that starting over is always an option, that you're never trapped in a situation beyond escape, that freedom is always possible if you're willing to make difficult choices.